Thank you very much for the introduction, brother. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulihil kareem wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you all, and a very good evening to everyone. Welcome to the opening session for Once Upon a Time, a series of programs organized by ALSALAM Club. I'm very grateful to the organizers for putting this together and inviting me, and also would like to thank all of you for taking time out today or this evening to come and listen, inshallah, to benefit. Today we will cover the life and the story of a man known as the fifth of the Khulafa al-Rashideen. It's not very common that a person that is outside of the era of the Sahaba is considered to be on the same level as the Sahaba. Not just any of the Sahaba, we're talking of the highest level of the Sahaba. And I think part of the inspiration for choosing this topic, this personality, is to give us an example of someone who did great things for Islam, even though he was not a Sahabi. Sometimes we have this perception that, oh, this person is a Sahabi, so he can do great things, but since I'm not a Sahabi or I'm not a Tabi'i, I can't do these kind of things. So now here in the example of Umar bin Abdulaziz, you have someone who was not a Sahabi, but still he achieved things that were amazing. And subhanAllah, even the time in which he completed his mission is phenomenal. I'll save it until a little bit later to build up to it. But imagine that he was able to turn around the condition of the whole ummah in a period of less than 3 years, which is less than the period of time that most prime ministers or presidents, they have to use a term. In less than that, he shifted so many policies and he made major changes. But I will go to that, inshallah, a little bit later on. So, since we do not have any extra time, we'll go straight into the story of the life of Umar ibn Abdulaziz. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. So, Umar ibn Abdulaziz lived in the time of the Khilafah of Bani Umayyah. But his coming had some very interesting stories that preceded his arrival. Before Umar ibn Abdulaziz was even on the face of this earth, there were some special things that were part of his story that were taking place. So the first of these things is a dream that Umar ibn Khattab had. He once saw a dream, and when he woke up, he had a line of poetry that just came to him. He said, "Ala walayta shi'ri, man hadha al-fata min nasli, alladhi yumli'u al-ard adlan, ba'daha al-mil'u al-jawri." He said, I wish that I could see this boy who will fill the earth with justice after it has been filled with injustice. And so the Sahaba and his companions, they start to ask him, who is this? I mean, what is this this person that you're talking about? And he was saying that someone is going to come from my lineage, from my descendants, and he will fill the earth with justice after it was filled before him with injustice. And there was a mention that he said, this boy I saw, he will have a mark on his head. You know, that's all he could explain. So from that point forward, all of the family of Umar bin Khattab, whenever there was a boy born, they would check his head, you know, to see if there was any mark there. If they didn't see any mark, they'd say, oh, this is not the one. And actually, Abdullah ibn Umar had one son, and he had a mole on his face. So they said, this is the chosen one. You know, this is the one that's going to be the great leader to fix everything. But it turned out that, and this son was named Bilal, because Abdullah ibn Umar, he loved Bilal so much that he named one of his sons Bilal. So this son that was born, his name was Bilal. He had this mark on his face. And they thought that he was going to be the great leader that would, you know, fix so many problems. Even though he was a very righteous person, it turned out that he was not the expected leader that they thought that he would be. So they waited more. So going on further, during the Khilafah of Umar ibn al-Khattab, he used to have a practice of going around in Medina and seeing the condition of the Muslims. He used to just go around at nighttime and people wouldn't know who he was, and then he would see if there were any hungry people or if there were any people with complaints, and these stories are well known. So one of these stories, Umar bin Khattab was out with one of his deputies and they were going around the houses just to see if there's anyone in need of any kind of help. And then they overheard, coming from one house, a discussion. So inside this house was a woman and her daughter. And the woman was telling her daughter, oh my daughter, put some water in the milk. Put some water in the milk so that we can make it expand and we can sell it, we can sell more and make more profit. And then the daughter told her mother that Umar bin Khattab has prohibited that. He actually went out publicly and he said no one should mix milk into the water or milk into the yogurt to expand it in order to try to make more profit. You're basically diluting the quality in order to produce more quantity in order to make more money. So Umar bin Khattab prohibited this kind of cheating in the market. So she said, I cannot do this because Umar bin Khattab said, don't do this. And the mother said, don't worry, Umar is not here. Umar cannot see you. And she said, in Arabic it says, إِذَا عُمَرْ لَا يَرَى فَإِنَّ رَبُّ عُمَرْ يَرَى. She said that if Umar doesn't see me, then the Lord of Umar can see me. The Lord of Umar can see me. And so that's why I cannot do it. So Umar bin Khattab, he said to his deputy, mark this house because we need to know who these people are. And some of the commentators mentioned that if this was a different kind of leader, he would have marked the house in order to punish the lady. But actually he wanted to mark the house because he wanted to know who this young girl was that feared Allah so much, that had this kind of taqwa, that she was even arguing with her mother not to do something that she was commanded to do just because she feared Allah. So he said, yeah, put a mark there. So after that he got some more information. Umar bin Khattab found out there was no man inside the house, there was no father there, so it was just the two of them. So then he called his sons. And subhanAllah, I did some research. Umar bin Khattab had a lot of sons. He had 2 wives before Islam and about 3 wives after Islam. And from each of those wives he had children. So the number of children is quite a lot. But he called some of his sons, let's say. Amongst them was Abdullah and I think Zubair. And one of them was Asim. So he said, which one of you is ready to get married? Because I found someone who's very qualified. So the first 2 sons were already married, so they said, we're okay. So the third son, which was Asim, he said, I need to get married. So, that's how we say it today. But he said, I'm ready. So he said, okay. And then he commanded him that he would marry with this girl who was righteous and she feared Allah. So Asim married this girl whose name is actually not mentioned in the hadith. She married him. And then from them came a daughter, and her name was Layla. Actually, we have the tree. You guys can see this. From this group came a girl. Yes, thank you very much. A girl came, Layla. And then this girl, Layla, married Abdulaziz bin Marwan, which was actually from one of the Umayyad family. He was the son of the Khalifa Marwan. And then from this Abdulaziz bin Marwan came Umar ibn Abdulaziz. So you can see from his heritage that Umar ibn Abdulaziz is the great-grandson of Umar ibn Khattab from his mother's side. Okay? So this is an interesting fact. So now you can know the exact the way that Umar ibn Abdulaziz is connected to Umar ibn Khattab. So you can see the dream of Umar bin Khattab will come true in this story. So during the time of Abdulaziz bin Marwan was actually one of the deputies of the Khalifa Marwan. And when his children were born, he was also looking for this chosen one. But none of his children had any mark on the head. So he gave up on it. But then one day, Abdulaziz was playing in the farm, so to speak, and then he went behind a carriage where the horses were, and somehow he got kicked by the horse. And so after he got kicked by the horse, it left a mark on his head. So while his father was attending to him, you know, he was like, oh, okay, are you okay? He was checking him to see if he was okay. He remembered this dream of Umar bin Khattab when he saw there was a scar on the side of his head. So he said, if this is the sign that Umar mentioned, then you are going to live a great life. So it was a very interesting situation where, you know, a child gets injured and scarred and his parents are telling him, you know, this could be a really great thing for you, you know, subhanAllah. But, you know, they were always looking for this sign, and then that turned out to be it. So that was the proof that actually he was the one. That was the first proof, not just the only proof, but the first proof that he was the one that Umar bin Khattab saw in his dream. So Umar ibn Abdulaziz was born in the year 61 Hijri. And this actually happened to be the same year that Hussein was killed. So during this time there was a lot of turmoil. And actually you need to paint a bit of a picture of what kind of society Umar ibn Abdulaziz was born into. During the time of Umar ibn Aziz, the Umayyad family was ruling the whole of the Islamic empire. And this was recently after, you know, the deaths of Uthman ibn Affan and also Ali ibn Abi Talib. So there were some tensions between some of the, I guess you can say, the tabi'een, between the Muslims themselves. There were some tensions because when Muawiyah came into power, and there's so much history that comes into what happened before Ibn Abdulaziz, but when Muawiyah came into power, he put his son Yazid to be the Khalifa after him, and that was the first time that a kind of khilafah based on family inheritance was started. No one used to, or the first khulafa never chose their sons to be khalifas after them. So when Muawiyah did it, it started a trend. So Muawiyah put his son Yazid, and then Yazid wanted to put his son after him, Marwan. And so this system of inheritance of the khilafah continued from that point forward pretty much. But Umar ibn Abdulaziz was an exception because he wasn't from that family of Muawiyah. And we'll explain that. So when Marwan became Khalifa, he installed Hajjaj over Iraq. And Hajjaj bin Yusuf was a famous oppressive governor. He wasn't Khalifa, but he was a governor. And when he ruled Iraq, they say he ruled with an iron fist. He was known for executing people. And subhanAllah, he even killed some Sahaba. He killed some Sahaba, including Abdullah ibn Umar. So, I mean, just to pause for a moment here, a lot of people think that if we have a system of khilafah that, you know, everything will fall in place, you know, the sky will turn pink and strawberries will fall down and there will be no injustice and everyone will be happy. But in fact, during the time of many of the khulafa, things were very complicated. So even though the khilafah system is the, you know, what we have in the history, what we have in the sunnah, doesn't mean that just because there is a khalifa that everything will be perfect. You need a khalifa who is also a righteous person, and you need righteous rulers under that khalifa, and you need righteous people. Even once there was a story where people asked Ali ibn Abi Talib, you know, when the fitna was happening to him, they asked Ali, you know, why are all these problems happening in your time, and you know, nothing like that ever happened before you? He said, you look at the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ who was following him. So because he had these kind of high quality followers, you saw that the things were, you know, things went very well. But then you look at my time, you have me, because the quality of the people is like your, you know, your example. So he was saying that, you know, when you have bad people, you get bad leaders. So I mean, you need a good society and also good leaders and also a good system. So you know, this is just something because I think there's a lot of kind of fantasy connected to the word, khilafah, that everything is perfect. No, there have been, some very difficult times and a lot of complicated politics within the khilafah system. So reading the history is very important for all of us who want to understand, how Muslim leaders should be and what were the challenges of the Muslim leaders in the past, even during the time of the khilafah. So Hajjaj was in Iraq, and they were both known. Marwan and Hajjaj were known to rule with the iron fist. And Marwan sent his armies to fight and take back land from Abdullah ibn Zubair. Now Abdullah ibn Zubair, this is the son of Sahabi. He was actually not supporting the Umayyad Khilafah. Actually, a number of the children of the great Khulafa didn't accept the Khilafah of Yazid. Abdullah ibn Umar didn't accept it. Abdurrahman, the son of Abu Bakr, didn't accept it. And there were maybe 2 or 3 other Sahabas. They didn't accept Yazid to be the Khalifa. They didn't go against him, but they didn't accept it. They just, they stayed away from the bay'ah. So from that, some other issues happened. And then later on, Abdullah ibn Zubair, he was militarily against the armies of Yazid. And later on, Marwan. So when Marwan came into power and he had Al-Hajjaj, they fought him and they actually took back Iraq from him. Now Abdul Malik bin Marwan succeeded his father, and he was known to be a righteous talib al-ilm. So at this time we had a kind of Khalifa that is ideal, because you see that the best of the Khulafa are those who have knowledge of the politics, and also they have knowledge of the deen, and they have a sense of taqwa. You have to have both sides. So Abdul Malik bin Marwan succeeded his father, and he was known to be a righteous talib al-ilm. Unfortunately, he left many of the generals in place that his father picked. So even though he came into power and he was trying to improve things, he left Hajjaj in his position, and he let a few of the other very strict rulers or oppressive rulers to keep their positions. So not everything changed. So this also shows you that change takes time. Sometimes we think that you just change one leader and then everything will change. But actually leaders have a whole network of followers and systems and policies that doesn't just change overnight. So even if you change the head of a system, it doesn't mean that everything will change. So Abdul Malik appointed his brother Abdul Aziz as the ruler of Egypt. So this Abdul Aziz, of course, is the father of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. So when he appointed Umar ibn Abdul Aziz to lead Egypt, Umar was a young boy at that time. And Umar, let's say he was like 5 or 6 years old. In this time, he was learning deen as well. Umar ibn Aziz actually used to spend a lot of time with Abdullah ibn Umar. And Abdullah ibn Umar was known to be one of the Sahaba that was the most passionate about following the Sunnah. They said everything he did was in line with the Sunnah, his salat, his walking, his sitting. And so Umar ibn Abdul Aziz used to learn all of this from Abdullah ibn Umar. And he also used to, of course, learn lessons of deen from him. So he had a direct link, to the Sunnah, from one of the Sahabi to teach him everything. So this was his first teacher actually, and he was very much attached to him, to the extent that when his father was sent to Egypt, when Abdul Aziz was supposed to go to Egypt to be the governor, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz said, I want to stay with my uncle, Abdullah ibn Umar. I want to stay with him because he's very dear to me. So he said, I can't leave you with him because I know he'll be too nice to you and he won't be strict with you. So he had to find a teacher for him. So this was when Umar Abdul Aziz got his first teacher for deen outside of his family. So the teacher that was chosen for him, was, his name was Ibn Kayzan. And this Ibn Kayzan was a famous murabbi, and he was also known to be very strict about making people wake up for tahajjud. So he used to go around and wake people up for tahajjud at night time, and he said, I didn't know that people used to sleep before Fajr. And he used to put pressure on people. And so he had a group of students, and he used to make them always, pray tahajjud and always be on time for all the salat. And of course, teach them other things. So the father of Umar ibn Abdulaziz, he wanted someone like this to make sure that he kept him in line while he was away, because he knew that his uncle would love him too much and let him, be free. So he got him a teacher that was a bit strict, but he was very good in his deen. So one time, Umar ibn Abdulaziz, he missed the takbir al-ula, the first takbir of the salah, and he came to the salah in the first rak'ah, but he missed the first takbir. So his teacher, Ibn Kaysan, he was looking for him in the beginning of the salah, because for him, you have to be at the salah for the first takbir to make the salah. So he missed the first takbir, and then after the salah, he found Umar ibn Abdulaziz, and he said, "Where were you? You missed the salah." He said, I was combing my hair, I was fixing my hair, and I got a little bit late, and then I came. So he said, "Your hair stopped you from coming to salah." So he said, "Okay, no problem." So he wrote a letter to his father in Egypt. He said, your son, he missed the salah because of his hair. Even though he just missed the first takbir, he said, your son missed the salah because of his hair. So his father, Abdul Aziz, he sent a barber from Egypt to come all the way to Medina. They were living in Medina. He sent a barber from Egypt to Medina. And he said, "I will not speak to you until after you cut your hair." So he cut his hair off, with the barber from Egypt. I don't know, maybe there's some legendary barbers in Egypt now because of this. But the barber came and he cut his hair. And then after that, his father began to speak to him again. So, it was that serious about the salah. So this was his education with Ibn Kaysan. And after this period, when his father was in Egypt, besides the teaching from Ibn Kaysan, he also used to sit with many other ulama. He used to like to spend time with ulama and learn deen. And so he actually studied fiqh, and he studied the Quran and many things. So during his young age, he was learning deen, and this is what his father wanted for him, because his father was also a righteous man. So alhamdulillah, he was raised in a very Islamic environment, in Medina in fact. So when he finished his let's say his course with Ibn Kaysan, he started to meet, he went once with Ibn Kaysan to Hajj, to meet his father, because his father was in Egypt and they were in Medina, so the only time that they could meet was in Hajj during Mecca. So Ibn Kaysan and Umar ibn Abdulaziz went to Mecca, and then the father, Abdul Aziz, also met them in Mecca. And so the father sent Umar ibn Abdulaziz away for a while, and he wanted to speak to his teacher. So he asked him, he said, "Tell me about my son. How is he in terms of his studies and his akhlaq and everything?" So Ibn Kaysan, who also met many of the tabi'een and even taught them, he said, "Wallahi, I have never met a single person who Allah was greater in his heart than Umar." This is how he described him. So inside he had a lot of praise for Umar. He was amazed by him. Like Allah was so important to him. Allah was the biggest factor in his life, to the extent that he said he never saw anyone who put Allah so high as Umar ibn Abdulaziz did. So this was a good sign in his upbringing. So since his father was governor, he was a very well-off person. So even though Umar bin Abdulaziz, he was studying deen and he was growing up to be a good person, he was also, let's say, he was pretty well-off, wealthy to a certain extent, because his father was a politician and he had a very high position. He was a governor. So even today, if you look at any children of the governors, they usually have very nice things. And it's actually said that he used to have very nice clothes and he used to live a very comfortable life. So he didn't face difficulty as far as accommodations and lifestyle when he was young. And when he turned 25, he was made the governor of Medina. And he sponsored the expansion of Masjid Nabawi from his own money. So when he was put in, when he was put in position in Medina, he was requesting the Khalifa at that time, "Please, I need a number of conditions." One of the conditions he actually put was that Hajjaj will never enter Medina, because he and his family, they had a serious problem with Hajjaj because he was known, like I said, for being very oppressive. He killed many people, including even some Sahaba, and you know, they could not do anything about him because he was in an official position. But what they did was they said, you know, at least we will keep him away from Medina. So during the time he was, they called him the Wali. He was not the Khalifa, but the people who take care of the different states, they call him the Wali. Since during the time that he was the Wali of Medina, he asked for this, and he also asked for, you know, for the Baytul Mal to be managed according to how he wished to manage it. Because the Umayyad Khalifa, they had a habit of taking from the Baytul Mal, which was supposed to be for the people, but they took it for the, you can say like the royal family. So there was a number of things that he wanted to change. So one of these things, he said, I will control the Baytul Mal how I see fit, and I will not give to anyone who I do not approve of. So he was given this permission. So he sponsored, one of the things that he wanted to show the people from the examples that, you know, of using the money properly, because their family had taken, the family of Bani Umayyah had taken the money from the Baytul Mal from a long time. He decided to sponsor the expansion of the Masjid Nabawi from his own money rather than the money of the people. And then Imam Malik was actually alive during this time. The Imam Malik, I mean the Imam of the Madhab, Imam Malik, he was alive in this time and he was in Medina. So it's interesting that Imam Malik actually had some good things to say about Umar ibn Abdulaziz. He said Imam Malik lived in Medina at the same time as Umar when he was the governor. And during that time, Imam Malik never rejected any of the fatwa given by Umar. So during this time, actually, even though he was active in his leadership role, he was also active in deen. And he used to give some fatwa. And Imam Malik never rejected any of the fatwa given by Umar ibn Abdulaziz. So this was a proof to show the quality of his education and studying the deen. And there's a list of scholars who he studied under. Unfortunately, I don't have the full list or even have enough time to go through all of them. But he was in a very good environment in Medina, so he was able to benefit from various scholars, and even Imam Malik himself was there. So the Khalifa, Walid ibn Abdul Malik, came under pressure from Hajjaj to actually remove Umar from the position of the Wali in Medina. And this was because he was making refugee camps for people who wanted to run away from Iraq. So he knew that Hajjaj was oppressing people, so he used to make camps outside of Iraq or, you know, near to Medina, where people could come. If they were suffering under Hajjaj, they could come to these camps and they could live there. So this was also boosting his approval ratings, as we would call it today. You know, a lot of people were speaking very highly of Umar ibn Abdulaziz. You know, he's reforming how to handle the money. He's making camps for the people that are, you know, suffering, don't have homes. You know, people were starting to give him praise. And so this was not making Hajjaj look good. So he's saying this guy is, and then also Hajjaj, whenever he wanted to go for Hajj, because they used to go for Hajj every year, all of the governors and things like that. When he wanted to go for Hajj, he couldn't go through Medina, so he had to go around Medina or things like that. So Hajjaj was what they called the Ra'is of the Shurta, and I depended heavily on a course about Umar ibn Abdulaziz from Sheikh Umar Sulaiman. He actually has a very good, like, 3-hour course about the life of Umar ibn Abdulaziz. And so he explained that, you know, the Ra'is al-Shurta at that time is like the head of intelligence. So Hajjaj's job was, besides being, well, before being the governor, he used to just have spies to find out anyone who was trying to do anything against the Khilafah of Bani Umayyah. And whenever he found somebody that was trying to rise up against the Khalifa of Bani Umayyah, he would have that person taken care of, as they say. You know? So that was his beginning. And then he became the governor and he just expanded that practice. So this person comes in Medina now, a totally different perspective, totally different style. It starts to put pressure on him. So he went to the Khalifa Walid ibn Abdul Malik, and he pressured him to please get this Umar ibn Abdulaziz out of the leadership position. So although Umar was very loved by the people of Medina, and they were very happy to have him there, and they were very satisfied with him, Walid kind of gave in to the pressure from Hajjaj, and he said, you know, he asked Umar, after 7 years of ruling Medina, he asked him to step down. And he asked him to go to Syria. He didn't fully take him out of politics though. He asked him to step down from his position of wali in Syria, wali in Medina, and go to be a wazir or an advisor in Syria. So now Umar ibn Abdulaziz is taking a different position. He's not the leader, but he's an advisor, because now he has experience, he knows about the issues of politics and things like that, so he's qualified to be an advisor at least. So when he went to Syria, he had to experience a different environment, because now he wouldn't be able to make the final decision about things. He could only advise about things. And this left him in a very difficult position for one specific issue. And it was a turning point in his life. During the time that Umar ibn Abdulaziz, during the time that Umar ibn Abdulaziz was the wazir in Syria, a man by the name of Khubayb bin Abdullah bin Zubair. Khubayb bin Abdullah bin Zubair was accused by Hajjaj and the Khalifa Walid of trying to start up a rebellion against the Umayyad family. Now who is this Khubayb? He's the son of Abdullah ibn Zubair. And what was Abdullah ibn Zubair doing before? He was fighting against the Umayyad family. So he was killed, actually, by the armies of Hajjaj and his followers. And so his son later on tried to restart that movement. And so when they investigated, they found out that he was in fact doing what he was accused to do. He was trying to organize an overthrow of Walid. So because of this, they said he must be lashed. They were going to whip him. So the Umayyad family, upon the investigation, when they found out that Khubayb was guilty, they said that they will put him, for these lashes, and Umar ibn Abdulaziz actually had to be a part of the decision of that. And even though he might not have liked that decision, he could not stop it. And so he was, he was part of the process of making that happen. And what happened was when they got Khubayb and they started to lash him, the guards that were doing it, they decided to go a bit further. So after they finished lashing him, what they did was they took cold water and they threw it on him, on his wounds. So this cold water actually caused him to get sick, maybe with infections or something like that. And while he was imprisoned, he died. And so this was something that went on to the history and the record, and also affected the heart of Umar ibn Abdulaziz, because all this time, you see, he's a talib al-ilm, he's studying knowledge, he has a good education, he's respected even by Imam Malik, and then he comes into this political situation, and then he's affiliated with the people who made the decision to kill someone who's even, the grandson of a Sahabi. And that also in an unjust way. It was through a way of oppression. So he could not forgive himself for that. And actually they said that he cried and he cried and he cried for a long time after he found out that Khubayb had died. And he never accepted any praise for anything he did after that. Even later on, when he became the Khalifa and he did many good things, inshallah, which we will talk about later on, he will say, وَكَيْفَ بِخُبَيْب. He's saying, you praise me for all of this, but what about Khubayb? He will come against me on the Day of Judgment. So this one thing weighed very heavily on his conscience for the rest of his life. So he couldn't really accept praise for anything, and he didn't forgive himself for that, so he just kept that in his mind for actually pretty much the rest of his life. And that was a turning point for him as far as how he would think about justice and how he would deal with the power that would be given to him later on in life. So inshallah, after a short break, we will continue and talk about how Umar ibn Abdulaziz moved from this position of being the wazir to later become the great Khalifa and reformer that we know him to be. So stay tuned for that. Thank you.
Give it up, y'all, to our brother, speaker of tonight, Brother Ahmad Sabree, again, please. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Brother Ahmad, for the great talk for tonight of one of the greatest Khalifa of all time, OMAR bin ABDULAZIZ. As for now, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is not working. Please again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you. Thank you very much. Tonight we have so many activities. As for now, our next activity, before I announce for that, I want you to do something small with me, okay? How many of you knew about OMAR bin ABDULAZIZ before this talk? How many? Only? Only 4, 5, 10? Okay, never mind. I think tonight, inshallah, after this talk, you will be more maybe informative about this. So for now, our next activity, I want you to please answer me. How many of you knows طلع البدر علينا? The Inshuda song, طلع البدر علينا? People? No one? Okay. Now I'm gonna sing this nasheed. Is it singing? It's not singing? Alright. So, I'm gonna sing it and I need you all to sing along with me. Alright? So I'm gonna start. I need you all to sing with me. 1, 2, 3. طلع البدر علينا من ثنيات الوداع وجب الشكر لله داع أيها المبعوث. Apparently this is not working. Well, I'm sorry, but this is not working at all. Anyways, our next performance is gonna be performed by a man who loves to sing while he's sleeping. He loves to sing in his dreams. He loves to sing in the toilet. He loves to sing in the class. He loves to sing in the airplane. He loves to sing anywhere. So, please welcome our brother Ubada.
شراب الحب يعرف بالمذاق وما كل السقاة له بساق. شراب الحب يعرف بالمذاق وما كل السقاة له بساق. أحب الله عن أدب وصدق ولا أرضى سوى التقوى خلاقي. إذا ما عشت لا أنسى إلهي به أسمو من الأخرى المراقي. يعز علي ترك الحب عندي ولو بلغت بي الروح التراقي. تركت جميع خلق الله دوني شغلت عن الخلائق باشتياقي. وشوقي قد مزجت به رجائي على خوف فمن خوفي مذاقي. ومن عرف المحبة عن يقين حرام أن يميل إلى فراقي. وكيف أحب غير الله يوما وليس سواه في الأكوان باقي. شراب الحب يعرف بالمذاق وما كل السقات له بساقي. أحب الله عن أدب وصدق ولا أرضى سوى التقوى خلاقي.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brother Abada. As for now, brothers and sisters, we have the quiz session where I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and whoever answers them will get a prize. I mean, you can answer, and if your your answer is correct, you'll get a prize. If your answer is not, you'll get a round of applause, and thank you. So, the first question is going to be, it's related to the topic today, of course. Our first question is, who was the grandfather of Omar bin Abdulaziz? Who knows? You want to pick? You want to pick? Okay, I'll let our brother Ahmed choose. One from the brothers, one from the sisters. Brother at the back, can you come forward, please? Can you come forward? What? Yeah, you. The brother at the back. Thank you. So, what? Is that correct? All right. He's got the prize over there. Now, please, I want volunteer from the sisters. The next question is, which year was he born? Sisters? No one? Okay, sister at the back. I can't hear. 60? 61, that's correct. Okay, we're done for the questions for now. Moving on to the next session by Brother AHMAD SABREE. So please bear with us. Thank you very much. Excuse me, please. Have you logged in and made the accounts for this website for the questions? Because after this, we're gonna ask Brother AHMAD SABREE your questions based on what we have on the website. So if you haven't logged in yet, please log in and put on your questions so we can ask them later. Thank you.
MashaAllah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulil Kareem wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So welcome back, and inshallah we will continue with our journey through the life story of Omar ibn Abdulaziz. Just in case any of you recently came here, I'll just briefly recap that Omar ibn Abdulaziz was born in, well, you already know now, the 61st year of Hijri, which is approximately 682 in the Gregorian calendar. He was born in Egypt. He grew up there, and after the death of his father, he was summoned to Damascus by Abdul Malik. Before that, he was the wali in Medina, and as I mentioned there, he did a great job as a leader, and he was forced to move to Syria actually because he did such a good job that he made another one of the leaders, Hajjaj, to look kind of bad. And then after that, during the time of Walid, he was a wazir, and he was involved indirectly with the unjust killing of Khubayb bin Abdulaziz, Khubayb ibn Abdullah ibn Zubair. Sorry about that. So, the list of Khulafa that had passed before Omar ibn Abdulaziz was first Abdul Malik, and then Walid ibn Abdul Malik, and then after Walid was Sulaiman. This was the last Khalifa before Omar ibn Abdulaziz. So, after Walid passed away, Sulaiman ibn Abdul Malik, which was his brother, became the Khalifa. Now, when Sulaiman was the Khalifa, he was actually quite young. I mean, young meaning like 30s or 40s. And he thought that he would be a ruler for a very long time. And he also respected Omar ibn Abdulaziz and another scholar, which his name was, I have to find it, very sorry. His name was Raja bin Haywa. Raja bin Haywa was known as the faqih of Palestine, or Philistine. He was a very famous scholar from Philistine, and he appointed these two people, Umar ibn Abdulaziz and Raja bin Haywa, to be his religious advisors during the time of his Khilafah. And Raja bin Haywa was very known to be very straightforward. You know, he didn't used to mince his words. He didn't used to hide his opinion. He was very serious about being on the deen, or following the sunnah very closely. And so one of the things that he instituted was that when he came as the advisor, he noticed that the people in Sham, because they were in Syria at this time, this was the head of the Khilafah, he noticed that the people were lazy about the salah. So he said, at this time, we should make it a rule that everyone has to close their shops during the time of salah. This was the opinion of Raja bin Haywa. And so Sulaiman ibn Abdul Malik, he implemented that. So they started to close the shops during the time of salah to make sure that the people get serious again about the salah, because the people were getting lazy about the salah. Okay, and then at this time, by the time that Sulaiman had taken power, Hajjaj had passed away. So things were changing now in the inside of the Umayyad dynasty. Even though he left so much carnage in his path, and I mentioned there that even Omar ibn Abdulaziz, his beloved uncle, Abdullah ibn Omar, was poisoned by Hajjaj. This was also something that he had to think about. And so the passing of Hajjaj let also some things change. So Sulaiman used to take Omar with him to Hajj. And when they used to go to Hajj, they used to be amazed by the number of people that were going around and doing tawaf and everything. And Sulaiman used to say to Omar that, you know, subhanAllah, look at all of these people and look how many they are coming all to perform this Hajj. And then Omar used to give him a reminder. He said, today they are like your flock, they are like your followers. But tomorrow they will be, he will say that they will, he used the word khusuma. He said, you know, on the day of judgment, they will be arguing against you, because all of the injustice that has happened during your time and before your time. So basically he was trying to motivate him that, hey, don't be so comfortable, don't be so proud of yourself. Look at these people as people that will potentially hold you accountable on the day of judgment, on Qiyamah. Don't look at them and say like, hey, look how many followers I have, I'm a great leader, you know, I'm so successful. He said, no, look at them and think that all of these people may stand up against me on the day of judgment. This is how he tried to give reminders. And then from that, you know, Sulaiman used to get, you know, worried, and he started to, you know, even cry when he started to think about it in a different way. Instead of celebrating how many followers he had, he started to think how many people that could stand up against him on the day of judgment. So this is the kind of advisor that he wanted. And he even used to tell Raja bin Haywa and tell Umar bin Abdulaziz that if I make a mistake, remind me. Tell me about it. So he had a good intention, and he also had a good motivation to make Islam part of his ruling when he was in power. And then one day, Sulaiman went out one day wearing a very nice thobe. And when I say very nice, I mean it was made from silk and it had jewels in it. So it wasn't just like kind of nice, you know, like 100 ringgit kind of nice. This was like something that we couldn't afford kind of nice. You won't even find it in KLCC. I'm joking. Okay, so he went out with this very nice suit, let's call it. And then he went to the people and he said, I am the young Khalifa, so follow me. Basically, he was saying, I'm going to be in power for a long time, and I'm young, so follow me. And I guess he was just giving a regular talk to some of his followers. But we cannot say because of that statement, but after that statement was made, shortly after, he became sick. And the sickness only got worse with time. And so Raja bin Haywa told him that this is a punishment from Allah for you making such a statement of arrogance. And so he was saying that you need to make tawbah from that. So he did, he made tawbah, and he regretted what he did. But as time went by, they realized that he was not recovered from this sickness. And they said, his skin started to bubble up, and his sickness got very bad. So at this point, they realized that he's not going to make it, and they have to choose another leader. And at that time, the next in the line of the family of Abdul Malik was the second Yazid. There was actually two Yazids. So there was a second Yazid, a younger one, but he was busy in Constantinople, or what would be today called as Turkey. He was busy there with one of the Ghazawat. He was trying to fight to open this place for Islam. So he was very far away. So there began a dialogue between Sulaiman and Raja bin Haywa, the second religious advisor of the Khalifa. So the Khalifa was trying to figure out who to choose next. So he told Raja, okay, maybe I have to call Yazid back to lead. But he said, we don't know how long you will last. And if there's a large gap between the time that you die and Yazid comes back, then the kingdom, not the kingdom, but the empire will be left to be vulnerable. So he was trying to advise him, don't choose him, because he wasn't telling him what to do directly. This is also the wisdom of a good advisor. He tries not to force his opinion, but give it in such a way to let the person think about it. So he said, okay, yeah, that's too risky. So then he said, okay, what about someone outside of your family? And this is actually something that had never been done. So Sulaiman said, someone outside of the family, this is not how we do things. But he said, this is a special case, so you maybe just think about it. So he said, okay, I'll think about it. Give me some time, and then come back. So he gave him a day or so, and then Raja bin Haywa came back to him. And he said, what did you decide? He said, I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I couldn't think of anyone. So what Raja bin Haywa was actually trying to get at, he wanted him to think about OMAR bin ABDULAZIZ to be the Khalifa. But he didn't get it. So he said, I couldn't think of anyone. So he told him, okay, what about OMAR bin ABDULAZIZ? And so he said, how could we put OMAR bin ABDULAZIZ? He's not from our family, and they would just get angry and overthrow him. So he said, we'll do it like this. We'll put him in power, or we'll select him to be the next Khalifa after you. And then you will also write that after he finishes, then the Khilafah will return back to your family. So that way the people who are from your family that are very passionate, they will relax, and they will let it go, because they know that after OMAR ibn ABDULAZIZ, it will come back to them. So he said, that's a good idea. So he said, let me think about it. And then he took some time, and then he finally decided to do that. And then he said that I will write a wasiyah that the shaitan will never be able to touch. So he was going to put it in writing, in his will, and he would also make it in such a way that he would make sure that everyone followed it. So when he was getting close to death, he brought all of his family, and he told them to make a bay'ah that they would obey whatever he wrote inside of the letter. And he brought also the head of the army at that time. I don't have his name, sorry. He brought the head of the army there to also be a witness, and Raja bin Haywa was also a witness. And all this was happening, and OMAR ibn ABDULAZIZ did not know about it. So actually when Raja came out of the first meeting with the Khalifa, OMAR ibn ABDULAZIZ asked him, did my name come in that discussion when you were talking about who to choose the next leader? And so since he knew that Omar didn't want to be the leader, he told him something clever. He said, do you really think that they would pick someone outside of the family to be a leader. And so from that, Omar got, yeah, it's not possible. And so he let it go. And so he didn't lie to him, he just changed the topic. So then after that, he met one of the family members of the Umayyads, who was supposed to be the next Khalifa. And he asked him, did my name come in the discussion when you were talking to the Khalifa? And then he said that the majalis are amana, that whatever happens in a majlis, it's an amana. And I cannot disclose anything to you about that. So it was left at that. So then, fast forward back, they made the bay'ah, everyone swore to follow what was inside of the letter that he wrote, and he put all the conditions there. And so then after he passed away, Raja bin Haywa was the one who opened the letter. And when he opened it and he read it, the family could not believe that Sulaiman had chose someone outside of their family to be the next Khalifa. And so there were some of them that said, Wallahi, we'll never accept this. But then Raja bin Haywa told them that you made a bay'ah to follow what was put in this wasiyah, and if you choose to disobey, then you are going against the Khalifa and we'll have to kill you. I know, it's just that simple, right? So, they backed off, especially the one who was supposed to be the successor after Sulaiman. When he heard this, he knew that there was nothing he could do. And it said that, he put his face down and, he started to turn blue because he just couldn't do anything. He couldn't argue and he knew he wouldn't take the position. So when the decision came, the royal guard, let's say the royal security of the Khalifa went to the house of OMAR BIN ABDULAZIZ to inform him what had happened. So imagine that someone is sitting at home, minding his own business. He was with his family, and actually it said that he had 20 children. He had a lot of children, 17 boys and 3 girls. Yeah. Not all, it probably took him some time for that, but yeah, during his lifetime, he had that many children. So when they came to his house, he was surprised. And then they entered with Raja bin Haywa, and they said that you have been selected to be the next Khalifa. And they said that he was so shocked he couldn't even stand up. And then he began to shout. He said, Wallahi, I never made dua for this, publicly or secretly. He said, I never made dua for this. And he went on from that point until the whole night, going around saying, Wallahi, I never asked for this. Wallahi, I never asked for this. Because he looked at it as a big amana. Like previously, he was reminding Sulaiman about how many responsibilities the Khalifa has to, restore justice, to fix things. And then now, the whole responsibility has fallen onto him. And so they said that people thought that he went crazy because he went on for a whole night saying, going everyone. He said, Wallahi, I didn't ask for this. La sirran wa la alaniya. Never in public or never in private did I ever ask for this. And so it was a very big pressure on him. Because he never thought it would happen. And he took it seriously. And it's in Islam that actually the best leaders, or the ones that are ideally chosen for leadership, are the ones that do not want the position. There was actually one Sahabi that came to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and asked him, put me as a governor in a certain city. And he said, no, I cannot do that. And so there was a kind of thing that people who chase after positions are a lot of times are not the best to be put in those positions. Not to say that you can never have a person who wants to go for a position that you put them there, but people that are very hungry for position usually are some of the not the best people to put in a certain position, especially when we're talking about very high positions. So this is something that we see in Islam, that those who know the real reality of leadership, they do not want it, because it's a huge amana, it's a huge burden, and it's something that will have you put under a lot of questioning on Yawm al-Qiyamah. So he wasn't comfortable with this, but it was forced on him. So what happened next was he was supposed to give the public, or take the public bay'ah. He took the private bay'ah from all of the royal, the family of Bani Umayyah and all the army. So imagine the army has already pledged allegiance to him. The governors have pledged allegiance to him. And so the next day he's supposed to give a khutbah in front of all the people and then take their bay'ah, take their pledge of allegiance. So he went on the minbar and he said, I've been given the position and the responsibility of being a Khalifa. And he said, my first decision as the Khalifa is to take myself out of the position of the Khalifa and let you to choose whoever you want to be the Khalifa, and I'm out of here. And so he actually got off the minbar and left the masjid. And so the people chased him and picked him up, and they said, La nuridu ghayrak. They said, we don't want anyone except you. They picked him up and they put him back. And then he ran away a second time. And then they picked him up and put him back. And they said, La nuridu ghayrak. He said, we don't want anyone except you. And imagine like the guy like in the khutbah, he starts running. And people start running after him and pick him up. A whole army of them, kind of like, I don't know how to describe it. But, a whole group of people carrying a guy who's alive. Usually in Jummah, sometimes you have a janazah and people carry a dead person. But, here's a guy, he's alive and kicking. And, they're carrying him back. And then he ran away a third time and they brought him back. And so, he didn't have any choice at that point. And then he rose and he stood and he said, I did not ask for this position, and I am not the best amongst you. And so therefore, there will be no obedience to me if it is in disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That was his opening speech, and he was feeling very burdened by the situation and what was taking place at that time. And said that, he cried after that because he knew what was about to happen. And so with this, he began his position as being the Khalifa of the Bani Umayyah, and he began to start planning to make major reforms. So the first thing they did after he gave his speech, he came out and they had all of the limousines, but of course not limousines. They had very nice horses for him and carriages and everything. And he said, I am not going to take any of this. He said, because the whole dynasty has been taking so many things from Baytul Mal unjustly. And these things are probably financed from that money that is haram. He was very careful about haram money. And you will see about that. He said he was very careful about that. So he said, I don't want to take any of this. Anything from Baytul Mal, I'm not going to take it. This was his promise. So he said, I'm going to go home with my own transportation. And so he bought a donkey. And he rode a donkey back to his house. And so here is all of his security with, beautiful, huge horses and carriages. And they're following behind him on a donkey. And so he rode the donkey back to his house. And they followed him, with their horses. And then he said, they said that the security force for the Khalifa at that time was 600 men. And so he said, I'm dismissing all of you. All of you can go back home. Retire from your position. And he only kept one person. And this person, he knew him. He said, I see you coming to Fajr. And I know you memorized the Quran. I think he mentioned that he memorized Quran. He said, and I see you in Fajr, so I will keep you, but only you. So he went from 600 to 1 as far as his security force. And he picked this person because of his seriousness about deen. And so that was his first move. After that, he sent all of these horses and everything. He said, give it all back to Baytul Mal. It's not going to be used by me. It's going to be used for the Ummah. So he put all of that back. And then he went to his wife. Now, I haven't spoken about his wife yet, but his wife was also from the family of Bani Umayyah, from the ruling family. And her father was Abdul Malik. And her father was a Khalifa, of course. And her grandfather was a Khalifa. So she was, for all basic definitions, a princess. And they said that she had jewelry which no one had ever seen before. It was so expensive. From pearls and gold and diamonds and everything. And so when Omar ibn Abdulaziz came back, he told his wife that things are going to change now. He said, we've been trusted with this position, and so now everything is shifting. He said, all of this jewelry and everything that you have, it has to go back to Baytul Mal. And he mentioned the ayah to her. The same ayah that the Prophet ﷺ told his wives, that if you want to stay for the sake of Allah, you stay. But if you wish to go, then you can go. So she said, I will stay. And she gave up all of the luxury that she had to stay with him. So this is a major level of commitment, because things did get difficult after that. So she gave up, this jewelry and the lavish life. And they had at that time 18 palaces that were dedicated for the Khalifa. And he gave away all of those. He said all of this goes back to Bayt al-Mal. And he bought a regular mud house near to the masjid. So that was the first shift. After that, he began a series of changes that he would make in the society to put things back as far as justice, because he was very concerned about the justice that would be done to the people. So he even changed the clothes that he would wear. They said that when he was a governor, or when he was young, he used to buy a thobe that was 400 dirhams. And even in today's money, that is a lot, because dirhams is from silver. And he used to buy something for 400 dirhams, and he would say, khashin walakinnaha jamila. He would say that it's rough, but it's beautiful. And then after he became Khalifa, he bought a type of thobe that was only 10 dirhams. And he said, this is too soft. Because he started to think about all the years of what he had enjoyed, which might have been from the money of other people. Because what was happening, during the time of Bani Umayyah is that they used to take the land that was waqf, and it takes some time to explain waqf, but basically land that was supposed to be for the whole ummah, something like a farm, some kind of land that produces money. This kind of land was taken by some of the people from Bani Umayyah, and they would make it their personal property. So let's say there's a farm that produces food, and someone made it that it's for everyone in the public, it's for the whole ummah. And then one prince will come, and then he will take it and he'll make it his own personal land. And so he will be making money from that, and no one would benefit from it except him. So OMAR bin ABDULAZIZ said, all of these lands, we have to put them back. So when he started his life in the office, he started to call the people from Bani Umayyah, and he used to ask them about every dinar they had. And he would ask them, where did you earn this dinar? And where did you earn that dinar? And where did you earn this dinar? And any dinar that was earned unjustly, he had it returned. And any dinar that a person did not know where it came from, he had it returned, all going back to Bayt al-Mal. And so the lands were also returned to Bayt al-Mal. And then also there was another issue, which was the Jizya. Jizya is a type of tax that is paid by the non-Muslims that live inside the Muslim land as a type of security. Since they don't join the army, they pay this tax. So what happened during the previous Umayyad leaders is that the people who were new Muslims, who converted to Islam, were still being charged jizya, and they paid zakat. And so Omar ibn Abdulaziz said this is a clear injustice, because these are Muslims, and you cannot treat a Muslim as if he's not a Muslim. And the people had no choice but to pay it, because they had very strict leaders. But when Omar ibn Abdulaziz came, he canceled that. And the people were fearful that if this jizya is canceled, it's going to reduce the income of the nation, because they were getting a lot of, let's call it tax income, from all these people paying jizya. Because at this time they were getting Persia. Persia became part of the ummah, and also Syria became part of the ummah, and places in North Africa like Algeria and Morocco, all of these things became part of the ummah. So there were many people in these places who were not Muslim. Persia, they had none of them, well, let's say only some of them were Muslims, but many non-Muslims, and they converted to Islam. In Algeria, you had the Berber people. They were not Arabs, they're a totally different tribe of people. They became Muslim. So these people who were new Muslims were being charged the Muslim zakah and also jizya of non-Muslims. Omar bin Abdulaziz canceled that. And then, after that, he began to use this money to start to build hospitals, to build hotels, to provide different kind of services for people. He even made a limit to how much weight you could put on the back of a camel. So he was even concerned about justice for the animals. So he put a limit that no one can put above X weight on the back of the camel or the horse or the donkey. So he wanted to make justice everywhere, to the extent that he said, I'm afraid that maybe on the Day of Judgment, a camel from Iraq, he actually said this, he said, I'm afraid that on the Day of Judgment, maybe a camel from Iraq will complain against me because I didn't pave the road to make his life easier. And subhanAllah, this is how deep he used to think about how he could use all of his resources in a just manner. And then the list goes on. His reforms are, subhanAllah, very numerous. But basically, he became the Khalifa at the age of 38. I just want to put that there so you guys can have an idea how old he was. He became the Khalifa at the age of 38. And he had a dream after becoming Khalifa that he saw the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and he pointed to Umar and Abu Bakr, and he said, follow these two in your decisions. So it's as if, you know, he was even guided in that. And there's also a famous hadith that mentions that at the end, or I said at the beginning of every 100 years, there will be a mujaddid, a person who will revive the deen. And the consensus of the scholars say that Umar ibn Abdulaziz was that mujaddid for his generation. He was the one who revived the deen. So also when he became the Khalifa, he had a council of scholars. He had a council of ulama that would be with him. And every night, as I read, every night they used to sit down and remind each other about death. And remind each other about what will happen on Qiyamah. So this had a heavy impact on him. Because he was not thinking, you know, about enjoying the position. He was actually thinking about what this position will do to him on Qiyamah. And imagine every night you're sitting with a group of people remembering death. I think it would be quite scary. But he did such a great job. Even in the beginning, when he first became the Khalifa, people were making poetry about him and all these kind of things. I'm really short on time, so I can't say all of those things. But I'll just try to read you the reforms that he also did. He also abolished the Jizya for the older non-Muslims because he felt this was something that was making their life difficult. So he said, okay, the old people from the non-Muslims, no need to charge them Jizya. And he sent Yahya bin Abdulaziz to collect zakah from the parts of Africa that were ruled by the Muslims. And it said that he spent 3 months and 10 days to find someone to accept the zakah, and he couldn't find anyone. He went for 3 months around Africa. So at that time, Africa means the whole of Egypt, Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco. Help me out. What else? Yemen? Come on, man. Sudan. Allah yahdik, ya akhi. Yeah, Sudan also. All of these places he went around for 3 months and 10 days trying to find someone to give the zakat donations to, and he couldn't find anyone. So they said, some people said that during the time of Umar ibn Abdulaziz, that poverty was completely eradicated. And then after that, he used to tell people to sprinkle wheat on the tops of the mountains so that people cannot even say a bird was hungry during the time of Umar ibn Abdulaziz. So I mean, that's how far he went. And he stopped the practice, this is very interesting, he stopped the practice of changing the kiswa every year. You know, the cover for the Kaaba, that is very, very expensive. You know, they say the threads are from gold and silver, and I don't know all the materials, but it's incredibly expensive to make it. Instead of changing the kiswa every year, he changed the practice, and he said, we will only wash it. Which makes sense, I mean. But to think about that, because even today, they change the kiswa every year, right? Yeah, even today, they change the kiswa every year. But during the time of Umar ibn Abdulaziz, he said, we'll wash it. And then look at the explanation he gave. He said, it is more important to feed the slave of Allah than it is to clothe the house of Allah. SubhanAllah. He said, it's more important to feed the slaves of Allah than to put clothing on the house of Allah. Meaning Allah's house is okay, it will be fine. But if the slave of Allah is hungry and he's suffering, this is not something that is acceptable. And it makes a lot of sense when you think about it, especially when you know the expenses. And then people take these pieces of the kiswa and they bring them, you know, around the world. And when they have fundraisers, you know, some people pay $10,000. I know sometimes they bring it to America. They pay a lot of money, you know, to get a little piece of the kiswa. And it's like, you know, why not just give that in the beginning and then, you know, save the money that it takes to make the new kiswa every year. So it makes a lot of logical sense. Then he also, when people criticized him for not taking jizya more like they used to, he said that Allah put us here to be callers to Islam, not collectors of tax. So he didn't want to influence a kind of system that always focused on taxes. And what happened was, when he decreased the amount of taxes that were put on the people started to produce more. and people started to do more commerce, and people started to begin or open more businesses, and the money started to flow better in the society. So this was actually the positive consequence, that instead of relying on taxes, the society was relying on commerce. And also, he started a scholarship system where good students of knowledge would get 1,000 gold pieces every week. So he started the major scholarships, and this also came from the money that was in Bayt al-Mal. So the money that was being enjoyed previously by people that were like a part of the ruling family, that money started to go to students of knowledge. And he was very much in love with hadith, so he used to sponsor the students who wanted to study hadith and compile hadith, and actually some major books were compiled during his time. He prohibited the ruling family to take anything from Bayt al-Mal during his time, so of course that made sure that everything went to the society. And when he was in his office, he would even, subhanAllah, he would take his lamp. He had a lamp, of course, that uses oil. So in the afternoon, or let's say in the evening time, if he was doing work that was related to taking care of the ummah, if someone came to him and wanted to speak to him, he would ask them stop first. And he would ask them, what you're going to ask me, is it related to the affairs of the ummah, or is it just something personal? So if it was something related to the affairs of the ummah, he would keep the lamp on. If it was not, he would switch the lamp off, and he would say, we have to use a different lamp, because this lamp, even the oil in it, is for the ummah. It's not for anyone else. So even his lamp, even what we call the electricity bill, he would make sure that electricity of the ummah even didn't go to something else other than the affairs of the ummah. So even down to his lamp he would change. He would differentiate between what was for him personally and what was for the community. He ordered a weekly inspection of jails to make sure that no one was in jail wrongfully, and he made sure that everyone had a quick going to trial, so that no one would stay in jail longer than they were supposed to. He set free most of his own slaves, and slaves around the whole ummah. Actually, people around, people at that time, they had slaves. So he freed almost all the slaves during that time. And then even the servants that he had, he freed them. And it said that on the day that he became the Khalifa, he did this, and people heard like a lot of crying coming out of his house. So they were trying to figure out what it was, and they found out that his servants didn't want to leave, because he said, if you stay with me, you have to live under the conditions that I live under. And what he used to do is he used to eat only adas every day. Like, this is lentils in English. Like, he used to eat just these beans and maybe with rice every day. And so it was to the extent one of his servants, when she was eating with his wife, she complained. She said, why do we have to eat these beans every day? And she said, this is the food of your Khalifa. This is not something that he's only giving to us. This is what he's eating also. So his food was very simple. And so he was saying to all of the servants that he had before, when he had the lavish life, he said that if you want to stay with me, you're going to have to eat beans only every day. So I'm letting you be free, and you can go and get jobs and do whatever you want to do. So many of them cried because they loved his company. They wanted to stay in his company and just be with him. So some of them left, but some of them stayed, even though they were free. They stayed just because they wanted to be in his company. And he sent letters to rulers around the world about Islam. And it says 15 leaders in India accepted Islam just through the correspondence with him. Just through sending letters back and forth, 15 leaders in India accepted Islam. And it's also said that he sent letters to China, and he sent letters to Tibet. And during the time that he was the Khalifa, they said that the people in the northwestern part of China, they came into Islam. So when Samarkand was conquered by the Muslim empire before the time of Umar ibn Abdulaziz, there was actually some injustice done. And what happened was, the army treated the people in a bad way, and they destroyed some of their churches and places of worship. And so when Umar ibn Abdulaziz came into power, he sent the army back to that place. And he told them to do something amazing. He said, go back there and build everything again. So this whole system of everything he was doing is called Radd al-Madhalim, giving back the rights of the people that were oppressed. So he sent his army there and rebuilt the whole city. And then, he basically, in doing that, he apologized to the people. And then these people were non-Muslims, and they were so impressed. And after he finished having his army rebuild the city, he told them to leave it, meaning give the whole city back to the people. And after all of this was done, 3 days later, the people wrote to Umar ibn Abdulaziz saying that, we want to accept Islam, and we want to be ruled under the leadership of Islam. So subhanAllah, through the justice, Islam spread in the time of Umar ibn Abdulaziz. And the examples go on to extend that it says that in Sham, there was also a church that was destroyed by Walid ibn Abdul Malik. And this was in Damascus. It was called the Basilica. And inside of this church, there was some artifact inside. I didn't quite understand what it was, but there was some artifact related to John the Baptist inside of this church. So what Walid did was he took this artifact and then he destroyed the church. So Umar ibn Abdulaziz ordered for this church to be rebuilt again and to put the artifact back inside and return it to the Christian people. So this, gives you a kind of wide perspective that he was interested in justice for everyone, the Muslims and non-Muslims, new Muslims, old Muslims. And even, animals at that time. So the last, I gotta give you one last story, and then after that we have to close up. Okay. So he made it a principle that all the governors of all the states had to attend the daily halaqah in the masajid. So he used to also attend the halaqas. He made a habit of always keeping a company with the ulama. This was something that he made a habit. So when he installed the governors in different states, he said, you also have to come to the masjid every day and listen to the halaqah. And he also advised people, he said, gain your knowledge while you are young. Because when you get older and you get positions, you get arrogant and then you don't want to listen to the people of knowledge. So this was his advice to many people. And Imam Malik said to him, or said about him, that actually he was one of the most deserving people to have his own madhab. So his knowledge of fiqh was very deep. So he dismantled his army, or at least he minimized his army expansion. Like he didn't go for expanding the empire, but he actually focused on consolidating things inside of the empire so that things would be peaceful and stable. And subhanAllah. Unfortunately, though he was doing such a great job in leadership, there were people from the Bani Umayyah who were not happy with him. And he was changing their lifestyle, because now, they were living a luxurious life previously. Now he was making them live like everyone else. And, no more enjoying palaces, and no more land with all these business deals. He prevented them from getting, like the big contracts like you would see today that a lot of only high-level politicians can get. He prevented them from doing that. So he made their life a bit uncomfortable. So after a certain point, things started to get unstable amongst them. So what happened was, one day he was having his meal inside of his home, and he felt that he ate something strange. And after he finished his meal, he asked the servant who served him, did you put something different inside the food? And then the man began to weep, and he said, I was commanded, or we don't really know if he was commanded, if he was forced to do it, but he was told to put poison inside of the food of Umar ibn Abdulaziz. And so he said, I was told to do this. And he's asked him immediately, he said, why would you do that? And he said, I was offered 1,000 dinar and my freedom. And he said, why do you need freedom when I gave you freedom when I first came into power? And he didn't have anything to say after that, and he began to cry. So he told him, do two things. Umar ibn Abdulaziz, subhanAllah, his life and his personality was very humble. He was considered as a zahid. So, he was a person who really didn't look at dunya as something that was important. And he used to always think about death. So this was probably something that he was not expecting, he was not so surprised about, because it wouldn't be the first time that it happened. So he said, do two things. He said, firstly, the money that you get, you must put it in Baytul Mal, because it's not yours. SubhanAllah, he's now preparing for death, and he's still thinking about making sure justice is done. He said, the 1,000 dinars you got, you have to put it in Baytul Mal. And then he said, secondly, you have to run now, because when people find out what you did, they will kill you. So he put the money in the Baytul Mal, and then he ran. And then his health started to, the health of Omar ibn Abdulaziz started to deteriorate. And they said within like a 20-year period, 20-day period, he lost his health. So within the first few days, they started to notice his health was going down, and the ambassadors from other countries started to come and visit him, because they realized that this was going to be the end. And so for so many days, people from outside were coming and visiting him, until after a certain point, he told his wife, Fatima, that I don't want any more visitors from outside to come. And he said, bring me only the orphans, because it is their company that gives softness to the heart. So actually, he was surrounded by a group of orphans during the last of his days. And then Malik bin Dinar, who was there at the time, said that there were so many people coming to grieve that there was nowhere to stay inside of the city. People were coming from all over to visit him, because they wanted to see him, one last time before he passed away. So the whole city was full. Everywhere there was a possible place to stay, it was full. Nowhere where could people stay. And then he had one last khutbah to give. And in this khutbah, he was not able to stand up even the whole time. He stood up and he spoke for a while, and he said, he told the people again, basically, he said, I am not the best amongst you, and Allah knows how many sins that I have. And so he was talking about himself, and inside of this khutbah, they said there was 50,000 people listening. And including in those 50,000 was the people who actually planned his assassination. So subhanAllah, in this chance where he could have lashed out against them, he talked about himself. And the people who were responsible for poisoning him were there listening to that. So you can only imagine how guilty they probably felt after that. And then he reminded them about death. And he reminded them about standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then after that he ended the khutbah. I would love to read it to you, but time is very short. So then he went to his house, and in the last of his hours, he was with his wife. And then after a certain point, he told his wife that he wanted to be alone. And just before his death, he recited the ayah, تلك الدار الآخرة نجعلها للذين لا يجعلها تلك الدار الآخرة نجعلها للذين لا يريدون في الأرض علوا ولا فسادا والعاقبة للمتقين. He said, the place in Jannah we have designated, there's a special place in Jannah we have designated to the people who do not want to be high in the dunya, who do not want status in the dunya, and they do not make fitna or fasad. And then he said the last victory, وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ, it means the last or the ultimate victory belongs to those that are muttaqeen. After he recited that, he said, may blessings be upon these faces that I see that are not from men or from jinn. And then after that he passed away. And they say that when he was lowered into the grave, he made a request from Raja bin Haywa, who was his colleague as being the religious advisor. He said, when I die, check and see, when you're putting me in the grave, check and see if my face is turned towards the Qibla. He said, I want you to be in the grave to receive my body. He said, when you receive my body, open the kafan, the cloth, and see if my face is turned toward the Qibla. He said, if it is, know that something good has happened to me. And he said, if it is not, then ask Allah to forgive me. So maybe he made a promise, or maybe he made a request to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to turn his face to the Qibla if Allah was happy with him. And so Rajab bin Haywa, when he received his body just to put in the grave, he opened it, the coffin, and he said, Wallahi, I saw a smile on his face that I never saw in dunya. I never saw him smile like this even in dunya. Subhanallah. And then he closed the coffin and he saw his face was turned towards the Qibla. They placed him there and he was buried. And so all of this legacy was left behind, subhanallah. And can you imagine how long it took him to do all of this? 2 years, 5 months, and 5 days only. SubhanAllah. So after his death, the second Yazid came and he offered the jewelry. There was some aftershock after this. When Omar ibn Abdulaziz passed away, of course, people were mourning for a long time, and his wife was left behind. So when Yazid came into power, he offered her. He said, okay, now all of this business is done. Here's all the jewelry that you used to have before. And she said, Ana kama kunt. She said, I am as I was. And I will stay upon what Omar was on until I die, so that I may be joined with him in Jannah. So she chose, subhanAllah, she chose to live a simple life even after Ibn Abdulaziz left, so that she could still take the same level that he took in Jannah. And his children were left with nothing as far as the inheritance. They said after they divided all of his money, each one of them got 19 dirhams, which is just a few dollars. And some of his companions told him before he died that you have to leave your children with something, because even there's a hadith that it's better to leave your family with wealth than to leave them poor and begging. But he said, my family is a special case and Allah will take care of them. And so even though his children had no inheritance, there was one man who lived to see the time of Umar ibn Abdulaziz and the Khalifa after him, and even the second Khalifa after him. And he said, Wallahi, even though the children of Umar had only 19 dirhams, he said a few years later they were giving hundreds of camels fi sabilillah for different expeditions. And he said, I saw the children of Yazid and Hisham, they got 1 million dirhams after their fathers died, and I saw them a few years later begging in the streets. And he saw this with his own eyes. So he said, this is the promise that, he says, وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ in the Quran, that even if a person is not wealthy in the beginning, if his father left something good behind, or he left a good legacy behind, the children can benefit. And the ulama, they mentioned the story of, in Surah Kahf, when Khidr, he built the wall, and he said, وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا. He was building up this wall so that these children could inherit from their father. And he did that because the father was righteous. So the children of Umar ibn Abdulaziz didn't suffer. So with this, inshallah, we close the story of Umar ibn Abdulaziz and his legacy and all the things that passed by, expired or took place in his life before and afterwards. And this is probably an introduction. It doesn't cover everything. And it serves to be an example. I didn't even have a chance to combine it to what's happening today in our leaders. But just a basic principle is that if we want to be good leaders in Islam, we have to be at least prepared to make sacrifices. It is not compulsory that we have to live and do exactly as Umar ibn Abdulaziz did, but the principles you have to take. You cannot take from the money of the people. You have to be prepared to sacrifice energy and sleep and time. And you have to be committed towards your principles. And it is, subhanAllah, to his legacy that Umar ibn Abdulaziz is respected even amongst Shia people. Because during his time he changed things in such a way that even they could not argue against him. So I mean, it's so much to learn from his life. So I encourage all of you to read more about Umar ibn Abdulaziz and talk about it with your friends and take him as an example for yourselves in the future. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.